What do you see that's different with the Janet Yellen and even Ben Bernanke Fed versus the Fed you left before the crisis, several years before the crisis?
Yeah, it's almost 10 years since I left, Rick. Back then, if you'd told me that we had 4% GDP growth and zero interest rate policy, I would have not believed you. It's sort of like the boiling frog. You know, we made this transition so gradually we don't quite realize how much has changed.
I love your boiling frog analogy. Let's leap forward 20 years. Do you think that the book's written about the Federal Reserve from the period of 07 to basically 2014, maybe 2015, is going to be a story about an institution that was a bit out of control with regard to the power that it saw it needed to take, in its opinion, as an institution during the credit-tight years of 07, 08, and part of 09? Or is it going to be basically a manifesto of how the Fed turned into an aggressive and stayed aggressive franchise?
I think it'll be more the latter. The Fed was late recognizing the seriousness of the situation in 2007, but I think Mr. Bernanke's actions in 2008 and 9 probably saved us from another Great Depression. I'm very supportive of that. I think the question is, are we staying a little too long, staying too easy too long? But I think Mr. Bernanke will get very good marks for what he did during the crisis period.
Well, you know, we could argue about the counterfactuals of whether the Fed should have done everything it did, but let's stick with the point of maybe outstaying the weakness and crisis with regard to the economy. I know that the taper is going to continue and we're not going to see any more quantitative easing, but zero interest rate policy, as you reference, just boatloads of unintended consequences, but it just must be more nervous for the Fed to acknowledge a balanced approach. Do you have any reason not to see them in a more flexible, balanced approach? You raise rates, maybe close to 1.25 Taylor rule, and then you watch the economy and you tweak it. Why can't they be more fluid?
Actually, I've never quite understood why the quantitative easing had to come to an end quite a while before interest rates could begin to normalize. I think interest rates could begin to normalize last year, and it probably should never have gone to 0 to 1/4. A 0.5 to 1 or 1 to 1.25 is very low, and I think the sooner we get to that, the better.
Last week, everybody was talking about Milton Friedman had a birthday, and you were a big advocate and follower of his teachings. My final question, the final 40 seconds. I know inflation and deflation is always a monetary phenomenon, but that doesn't mean we can't mislabel it. I'm sorry, I look at Europe, and I think that central banks have caused the downward pressure in prices. I don't think it's labeled as correctly. Your thoughts?
Well, Europe may be entering a triple dip recession. And I've heard you talk recently about the dollar versus the euro, and you think it may be more euro weakness than dollar strength. I urge you to look into the weightings of the DXY. Europe is way overweighted in that index.
Yeah, it is. Listen, we're out of time.
China
Bob,
and Mexico are not even in there.
You're right. It's very, very, very Eurocentric. And on that, we'll thank you for taking the time this Monday morning.